Hi everyone, this is Nick, and today we're going to go over the basics of the M3 mount for Mac Mini and where the inspiration for it really came from. So we are in my home office where this all began, and to demo these concepts we're going to use my primary gaming rig behind me as an example because it's huge, and of course looking at things when they're blown up very big is usually a lot easier to understand. I'm going to give bookmarks in this video, well, just probably one. If you're already like a guru on PC cooling, you can skip ahead to that bookmark and just kind of listen to me talk about specifically how it applies to the M3 mount for Mac Mini. Without further ado, let's go. So over here we have my primary gaming rig. So giant black geeky looking box with a bunch of lights on it. Is pretty much how the girlfriend would describe it. Now, the concept of desktop cooling is pretty much the same, whether you are looking at a giant gaming rig like this, a medium-sized desktop like that, a server or a iMac, or the Mini, which I'm going to tuck down over here. These concepts apply to all of those. And the general concept here, I'm going to try to keep this, as easy as possible, is that you are drawing cool air from the bottom front portion of the case. You'll notice there's actually another huge fan right here. And then you have your array of fans here. What these fans are doing is they're actively pulling in cool air from your environment. So I mean, it's as cool as this space you put this in. There's no refrigeration unit here or anything, but the air in the room is going to be much cooler than the hot components that are running inside your computer. Of course, here you have your graphics card, your memory, processor, all of those hot things. And these are heat sinks, so they're pulling heat off those components. But of course, that heat would just stay inside this giant box, if you just kind of left it there, right? I mean, it would kind of passively go, but that's not going to be enough. So we have cool air getting pulled in here, and then it gets brought across these components. You'll see that everything's sort of angled up this way, and then those components are heated up, they heat that air, and then that air is exhausted out the back and the top of the case. You'll notice, we have an exhaust fan here, and then two what we call blowhole fans across the top. These are big 200 millimeter fans. If you saw the very first Lego prototype of the M3 mount, you'll notice that those are the same size fans. So those fans are all pulling the hot air up and out of the computer. So you've got some nice mesh up here and on the back, so all that hot air is getting pushed out. And then of course that process is a rinse and repeat type process. The hot air goes up and out, and then of course because hot air rises, and then of course you're pulling in more cool air along the front of the case. Now like I said, this applies to any computer. The configuration will be a little different, right? I mean, this is a giant case. We have a lot of fans. Not all cases will have the front fans or bottom fans. A simple desktop case, you can see the bottom of that one is just solid, but has a fan, pulling in the top. You could also just get by with a single, exhaust fan in the rear. It's ultimately going to generate airflow, not nearly as much. But depending on how much your components heat up, I've got a giant graphics card here and stuff, that might be enough. In an iMac, which we have over there, you've got a few blower fans that are pulling air in along the bottom array of mesh, and then, it gets exhausted out the top. If you ever put your hand behind your iMac screen, you'll notice that it's quite warm back there. And even, of course, an Xbox 360 or a PS3 or any entertainment console works on the same concepts as well. Now, if you remember with the 360 having like overheat issues, part of that is airflow. And, PC cases or consoles or whatever, they do allow for airflow, right? You have to. And here, we've got these side channels along the bottom of the case, as well as these channels at the front of the case, and that's to allow air to be brought into the computer. Because you can have the exhaust fan, but if you don't have room for air to come in, then it's pretty well useless. Now this is all well and good, but especially for a large desktop like this, you'll notice that in comparison to the desk, it comes out quite a ways, and of course it's quite tall, very tall. You can that's an average sized desk. You can see that extends well above it. If we were to put that on a desk, it'd be like putting a wall up in this room. Now, having something like this, you're going to put it on the floor. If we had carpet here, the carpet fibers are, of course, going to block the airflow. If you have a MacBook, which everybody should have a MacBook, but if you have a MacBook or any sort of laptop, you'll notice, if you're sitting in bed and you put it on top of your comforter without putting a lap desk there or something, after a while the fans kick on really high, it starts to get hot. What's essentially happening there is you're blocking the airflow from coming into the machine. Very much the same way carpet would. And in our case, we've got nice, well, not really nice, but we've got hardwood. Putting it on the floor, it would suck up a ton of dust. I'm actually realizing here my floor is really dusty and dirty. Surprised the girlfriend hasn't yelled at me for that. But you'll notice that the dust is on the floor. I would much rather have dust on my floor than in my computer. And if the computer was sitting on the ground, you essentially have, a vacuum cleaner sitting on your floor all the time. The only difference being that it's a very expensive vacuum cleaner with parts in it that need to be cool, or, if you don't cool your PC parts, it affects your performance, because once a computer heats up to a certain point, it says, whoa, this is getting dangerous. And what happens is, your processor, your graphics cards start to throttle back. They essentially, cut their specs in half. So if you have a 3.6 gigahertz processor, it might only run at 2.4 or something. Because it's running so hot, it tries to compensate. So that stinks. And then, of course, you're constantly heating these parts up past what they should be heated up. That's bad for the parts. It's going to reduce their life as well, which nobody wants. So what I did at first is I wanted to lift this up above the floor. And I experimented with the idea of bungees, but this was really dangerous, and suspending things from the ceiling, not girlfriend approved either. So what we started off with was milk crates, and saw actually that there was an improvement in the temperatures. Of course, the problem with milk crates are, first of all, they're ugly. This is like $10 milk crate type thing from, Walmart. Actually, it's not technically a milk crate. It's like a file, something, mesh drawer, or whatever. But, it looks cheap, so it doesn't look good. It was starting to bend after a while. It just wasn't altogether good. I needed something more permanent, and preferably something that looked a little more like furniture, maybe match the desk. So I decided was to build, just a table, right? Lift it up off the ground. And while I was doing that, I was like, well, I might as well, if I'm lifting this off the ground, what other ways can I improve this? Along with the milk crates, one of the reasons the milk crates work so well is because, they're not solid. So they allow air to pass through them. You'll notice with this table, okay, we've got nice space underneath. But also, if you look closely, you'll see that the entire top of the table is actually what was a repurposed metal shelf. So it's all completely, not really mesh, they're rails, and they have a nice little inset here where everything sits. And then the computer sits on top of that, and we've got a support running along this as well. But the awesome thing about this is it completely allows air to flow freely through the case. So you've got, air coming up under the table and directly into those fans. You can see my hand coming up through there. So you don't need to pull air through the channels or anything like that. It literally just comes up through the case. How does this relate to the M3 mount for Mac Mini? Well, this table here is really just a sized up version of the M3 mount for Mac Mini. It's a small table. It lifts up the Mac Mini. And then because the Mac Mini is a single blower fan, by allowing space, since we've got all this space underneath, this computer already has fans built in, so we didn't need to add any fans down here. It'd be redundant. For the Mac Mini, because there's no bottom fans actively pushing air into the Mac Mini, decided that, hey, if we're going to build this thing to lift up the Mac Mini, then we might as well go ahead and, add a fan to it as well. So that is the basics of computer cooling and, where the idea came for the M3 mount for Mac Mini. I'm going to be doing another video, like I said, on specifically, how the Mac Mini cooling works and everything like that. But I sort of wanted to just share with everyone, where the idea came from. And in the future, if this product does well, we may very well go ahead and start mass producing, things like this. We've experimented with laptops, things like that. Now, we're not trying to, make portable laptop coolers or anything like that. These products are for people who are using the Mac Mini for media center, for a work computer. The Mac Mini's it's portable. I love it. I've stashed it in a bag, taken it to conferences. But, it is a desktop computing device. It's going to sit somewhere for a while. I use mine. It sits over here as a media server for pretty much everything in the house. I sync files to it, scan things. It's constantly running, and sometimes it's running pretty hard, transcoding video and doing all of that. Having something that it can sit on and just, have air constantly pumping into it, it runs way quieter. I never have issues with it overheating anymore. The really cool thing is this table, when I first installed it, I did run this computer on the floor for a while to see what it would do. And then when I installed the table, under various different tests, this machine here was running 5 to 10 degrees Celsius cooler than what it was when it was just sitting on the floor. What's really cool is that exact same thing happened when we lifted up the Mac Mini. Lifting it up 5 to 10 degrees cooler, depending on what you're doing, whether it's idling or you're gaming or, that sort of thing. I have my Mac Mini maxed out with 16 gigs of RAM and 2 SSDs and RAID 0. So, that thing is pumping all the time. So to have that temperature drop is great. The fans are way quieter. You have that one big fan. The cool thing is that big fans cool efficiently while running slower. So instead of having a tiny little blower fan that's in the Mac Mini, which is I'm pretty sure smaller than what's in my MacBook Pro, that tiny little thing, when it starts going really hard, that thing is buzzing and really loud. You're sitting next to it and it's like, whoa, what just happened? Why did this start turning all of a sudden? Now you don't even notice it. These fans are super quiet. You might be hearing them on video because, there are so many and because the case is open. But you can imagine, taking a single one of these fans and putting it on there. It's much quieter. The little blower fan on the Mac Mini doesn't need to run as hard, which I can only imagine extends its life. And, quiet is always nice, especially if you're going to put this thing, I have it upstairs, and then I stream to my Roku downstairs. But before I had a Roku, I actually had my Mac Mini, right by my TV. And, if you're watching a movie, it kind of ruins the movie to be having, things buzzing in the background or whatnot. Having it sit there and be quiet while you're watching the movie is just great. So I'm really happy that we were able to start making these things and get our pages up and start selling them to the general public. Right now they're on pre-order, but hopefully we'll have a production run soon in late 2015 and be able to start getting them out to everyone. All right, well, that's it. Be on our YouTube channel and watch for our next video. And thank you very much. All right.